the unique strength of humans is they can dream. No other creature on the planet dreams. So we dream and we manifest those dreams. Like currency is a dreamt up concept of like money, concept of trade, concept of all these are like, made up stuff, like humans made it up. So I think creativity is something we're innately human, at least I like to believe. So maybe in the next 30, 40 years, we'll have the, androids like this described in Blade Runner, right? They have empathy, they have emotions, they have feelings, maybe. But I think until then, creativity is a uniquely human trait. And I think that's where you should lean in, right? And figure out like how to cultivate that aspect. Can you reflect on your actions and outcomes and automatically figure out whether you could improve? And it's a very hard skill for people to have and develop. So that's number one. A close second is ownership. Would you put your hands up for cleaning up, somebody else's mess? Right? And those two skills are so hard to develop. I would take like somebody who's not functionally competent but has those two other skills. Because I can guarantee you they'll last you longer than the other sort of rock star engineer.
Welcome to Beyond Brilliance podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Thanks for tuning in. And on this show, we talk with leaders across tech, leadership, and data to uncover practical insights of building at the edge of innovation. Today, we are diving into what it takes to leading product, tech, and people at scale. And I'll hand it over to JK, who will introduce our guest for today.
Hey everyone, great to have you back. Today's guest is Mahesh Guruswamy, a seasoned tech leader who's gone from writing code at Amazon to driving product and engineering at Kickstarter. He is also behind the newsletter The Sensible Manager and the author of How to Deliver Bad News and Get Away with It. Mahesh brings a rare blend of calm clarity and sharp execution, and today he's unpacking the realities of leadership at scale. So the way I want to start this one specifically is, given who you are today, Chief Product and Technology Officer, that's a big combo. Walk us through what does a typical Monday looks like for you in a given week.
Let me look at my calendar. So Mondays are prepared for the executive meeting, a bunch of one-on-ones, couple of meetings around projects that are on fire, and customer conversations, basically.
Thank you. Starts off on a bang on any given Monday. Where does product and engineering naturally clash, and how do you prevent it?
I think the timelines for deliveries are when these two organizations clash, and also scope, right? So product would say, hey, we want this and this and this done by this time. Engineering will be like, you can only get like 2 of those. You're not going to get all 3 of those, or you have to like sacrifice something else. I think this is my personal opinion, having like 2 leaders duke it out, I prefer like one person make the trade-off call. So use your business judgment to figure out whether this is the right trade-off to make or not, right? And that's kind of my role is, do I make this trade-off now or do I make this trade-off later, or is it a different type of trade-off? So that's where they typically clash. And usually that, that tension doesn't go above me because I'll make the call in the end. But if you can imagine having a CPO or a CTO, you can escalate it all the way up, and then the CEO has to make that call, right? Which I would argue is not the best use of their time.
I agree. For you, what does building the next gen set of features for creators and backers mean in practice?
I think we think about that quite a bit. If I look at the current creator base for Kickstarter, they are predominantly millennials. So Kickstarter was started when millennials, I guess, quote unquote, came to age. So when they had disposable income, Kickstarter came about. And now we're at a point where the millennials are somewhat aging out. They're deciding to spend their money on other things like college funds for their kids or healthcare or other like long-term investments. So their kind of discretionary spending power or like behaviors have changed. So now the challenge in front of us as a company is, how do you go nurture the next generation of creators? A quickly growing population of creators is Gen Z. So they are quickly growing on the platform. But their behaviors or the type of products they want to launch, type of campaigns they want to run is way different than what millennials were trying to do. So that is the big focus for us sort of heading into the new year. Like right now, we have a bunch of like product gaps that we have to fill for our current customer base. But in the coming years, I want to focus on how do I grow this new cohort of quickly growing creators.
Let's get to the softer side of
Sure.
things here, Mahesh, right? So people describe you as calm but oddly ambitious. I just find that as a fascinating combination to have. And how do you stay grounded while still pushing hard, both yourself and people around you?
I think the thing that I tell myself is I'll never be cruel to anyone. I'll always be fair and I'll always be upfront and transparent as much as possible. Like the intense kind of political way of getting stuff done, that is not my thing at all, right? Which is why I tend to work in smaller companies where there's no need to do all these kinds of gymnastics, right? So but I also want to be in a company, in a team which is ambitious, because as I mentioned in our previous conversation, like time is of essence to me, right? Like I don't believe in retirement. I don't believe in, not having to do anything. I would like the optionality to like not do anything, but I would want to like spend my time in a meaningful way. Like if you think about how humanity came about, it looks like sheer luck, right? Like how Homo sapiens evolved. Like I can't even imagine, that happening easily at all. So if you assume that it's just a miracle that humans are here, then we have to find a way to make the world like a little bit better around us. And that drives all of my decisions, all the companies that I work for, all the coaching I do, because I don't want to I don't want to stay stagnant. But as long as my core moral values are, I'm hitting all of them. It's just like not screwing over anybody, being fair and not being cruel, not holding grudges, all those kinds of things. As long as I'm like continuing to do that and making the world like a little bit better through my actions directly or indirectly, then I think I'm okay.
Yeah, definitely, Mahesh. One thing I wanted to further explore on this theme is, can you give us an example of a high pressure situation where you had to communicate urgency but still not create a lot of panic around you? So how do you do that in practice?
Yeah, I think I'll give an example. So this is a couple of jobs ago, and we were doing this major infrastructure upgrade. So we were changing databases because the old database infrastructure was not scaling for our needs. And we had planned everything out. We had planned to do the cutover on a Sunday, and we're all like getting ready for it. The original timeline that we communicated to customers was there'll be a 5-minute downtime. We said we're going to be down for 5 minutes and then we'll bring it back up because you have to stop the old one and cut over to the new one. And in that moment, everything went south. So the new server did not come up quickly. It came up but it was slow. And we had to go find out like, why is this not handling the traffic? The 5-minute downtime became, I don't know, like an hour downtime. And so we're getting questions from my CEO. Customers were asking what is going on. Customer support was like, what the hell is going on? We're getting requests from customers. So what I did was, you know, you, you the in situations like those, people already know that they have to resolve this quickly, right? But the thing that comes in the way, if you apply additional pressure on them to get it done quickly, right? For example, if you go, is this done yet? Is this done yet? This is not, is it, oh, I find it unacceptable that we haven't solved it yet. That is not going to get you anywhere, especially in a high pressure situation like that, where people are just motivated to get stuff done, but they just need the space. So what I did was I carved out the engineering team and said, okay, go solve the problem. I wanted the VP of infrastructure. I told him, go stay with them, make sure like they have everything they need, and let's have them solve the problem. I sort of took all the kind of the outward communication, talking to customers, putting out a public post that this is what's going on, and talking to the CEO. And in the end, everybody wanted transparency. Like everybody was understandable that this thing has happened. They were like happy for the details. But so I took the heat away from the engineering team and I just took it on myself and say, okay, I'm just going to go have these discussions and conversations. Um, and that worked. Like, we had an hour outage, which is not great. But in the end, we resolved it, and everybody's back to back to business. But it's like I actually show, urgency in non-critical situations, because in critical situations, people are already wired to like move as quickly as possible, right? But if you're like a project that's like delayed, then I'm like, okay, we have delayed this multiple times now. What do we have to do to like bring it back? But in like production incidents or customer escalations, I would just like let the team do their job and I can go take the heat for them.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that.
As I think about where you just left off, and given your role, which is leading product design and engineering, three disciplines with very different ways of thinking, how do you drive alignment without diluting each one's voice?
It's a good question. I think it's the way to show love to a specific discipline is to have a functional owner. So, for example, if I could have easily moved the product designers to report to the product managers, I could have moved the product managers to report to the engineering manager. I could have done a bunch of things and sort of save on management layers. But the way to give every function a voice is to have a good leader above it who knows what to do, who can build relationships with that team, and who's like good at that craft, right? So, and that's an easy way to ensure like we're listening to their voices and not just ignoring them when they come to you with concerns.
That's a fantastic answer. What is your personal framework for prioritization when everyone believes their thing is the most critical one? Because this is quite often why there is conflict among teams.
A few dimensions to think through. One is, does this align with the strategic direction of the company? So we try to get, I mean, not just at Kickstarter, but even before, is here's the goal for here's the sort of themes for the quarter, right? Or either themes for the year or themes for half the year. So we're aligned on that, and every project has to sort of fit into that theme. And we will deliberately make the choice of not picking up other projects that don't fit into the themes because we want to make a deliberate push in that specific direction. And if you explain it to people that way, people get it. It's like, okay, this is a deliberate choice you're making because you believe that pushing in this direction is valuable for the company and for the customers. Now, the exception to that is if your customers start yelling at you, a big part of them is saying, "Oh, your direction is wrong," then that's a signal that you have to like react to. The other exception is if there are infrastructure problems, if there's stability problems, if your system is not set up right, or you can't handle the load or you can't handle the traffic, like that's another dimension to look at. But in general, what I love to do is pin projects to a specific investment area. We're going to stick to that, even if it means we have to trade off other things because there's always going to be more work than people. It's always the case. It doesn't matter if you're a 10,000 person company or like a 2-person company.
Yeah, totally. I can completely resonate with that framework. So let's shift gears here. I wanted to talk to you about you're an author. You wrote a book which is quite a feat, and the title of the book is How to Deliver Bad News and Get Away with It. Let's be real, right? Most of us struggle here. What are the insights that you can give us and our audience?
Well, I think the biggest reason I wrote that book was I was terrible at it. I mean, I don't know if I would call myself excellent at giving bad news even now, right? Because I was having this conversation with somebody else. Humans have evolved to find safety in numbers. We have evolved to be part of a tribe. We have evolved to win as a group, preserve social cohesion. And to preserve social cohesion, you have to be nice to each other, right? So it's like evolution working against us when it comes to giving people tough feedback or like delivering bad news in general. And when I saw myself struggling to deliver bad news to employees, having tough conversations with customers, with bosses, stakeholders, etc., what I would do is I would deal with the situation at work, come back home and reflect on it and figure out like how would I have done better and write those things down for me. Eventually, those things became the book. But there's multiple topics in the book that I cover is how to deliver bad news to employees, stakeholders, bosses, your team, etc. Every situation is different. So I think my recommendation would like pick up the book for your audience, like if they want like understand that better. But broadly speaking, I would say it's part of being a leader. And if you, at the end of the book, there's a little questionnaire that I have. which I encourage people to take. If you are considering a job, a sort of role in leadership or role in management, they should take that questionnaire because it'll give them a sense of whether they'll be successful as a manager. Because 80% of your job is messy situations, and if you're not ready for it, then you will not be happy as a manager, right? So the biggest learning I would say takeaway for your audience would be like be conscious when you make that choice. Again, I'm not like trying to scare people away because people have done great things as leaders, right? They have built companies and scaled teams and added a tremendous amount of value for the economy. So, but be ready and be self-aware that this is going to be part of the job.
Yeah, I actually wanted to explore one aspect of it. I know that the book talks about
Sure.
different stakeholders, right? Let's take it to a personal
Mhm.
employee situation. How do you maintain trust after giving news that impacts somebody's role in a company or probably even their future, right?
Right.
So you probably made the decision to let go that person. How do you maintain the trust after delivering that news?
I think it's hard, but the key thing I've seen some people do is they try to convince themselves that the person they're delivering bad news to is like a bad person. They kind of convince themselves to not like that person. So when they deliver the bad news, it's easy, right? It's easy to give somebody bad news if you don't like them, but that is the wrong thing to do, right? Because and I say this even to people who I have let go, is like 99.9% of the world, professional world, know what to do. They know their jobs, they know how to do the job well, but they just might not be able to do it in that current company, in that current role. So chances are you move from this company to some other company, you do really well, you're successful there. So if if you handle all these conversations with empathy, with fairness, with transparency, then I think there's a chance you might be able to preserve trust. The one thing I do is I tell people who I have let go, like 99.9% of them, some of them I have let go because of ethical reasons, HR reasons, that's different. But for like work related reasons, performance related, I tell people that I'm willing to make connections for you after the fact. I can give a reference for you to your new manager, and I'll help you with your job search if you need my help. Because in the end, it was a fit problem with the current team versus an overall like you problem, right? So because I've been let go too, and in the moment it hurts, but I know like it's just like I was not a good fit for that company. I'm probably a better fit for some other company. So and and some people like my success rate is like 50-50. 50% of the people come back and stay in touch, and I have helped them out a couple of times with like jobs and all that, and 50% of the time they don't like reach back out, and I actually don't know what they think of me, you know. But there's no way you're gonna feel okay after being let go, right? It's just gonna be always hard. But you know, I always try to kind of preserve humanity in these conversations because people are not numbers in a spreadsheet. Like they're like real people with lives, ambitions, goals, dreams, aspirations, and I try to be cognizant of them as much as possible throughout this process. If things are not working out, I'm also fairly transparent that things are not working out. And the one thing I do, and sometimes the HR doesn't like it when I do this, is I try to give them an out before things become formal. So I usually do this with my leadership hires. I go, hey, things are not working out. Now we can go through the regular PIP process and all that. Or, here's a severance. You can take it and leave at your own terms. We can craft the messaging for you. You can decide like what you want to say to your team, so that you don't have to go through the kind of the okay, you're on a performance plan now, and then you have to like if we end up letting you go, then we'll have to like explain that to your team who might have different points of views on this whole thing. So I tend to like give people an out. Hey, it's not working out. Do you want to take an out? And a lot of people take it, right? Because it's not worth anybody's time to just torture each other with like HR paperwork and additional scrutiny and all that. Might as well. I mean, I tell my managers, my bosses too, like, hey, if things are not seeming to work out, just tell me, right? So that I can just take the time to go find another job and go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a powerful reflection, Mahesh. I think not a lot of companies have this forward-looking outlook, like, giving people a choice whether they want to go out on their terms
Right.
or subject them through this grueling PIP process, which neither of us enjoy, not the employee, not the manager. And the whole process is, I feel like it's just not worth it,
That's right.
right?
That's right. And like large companies also tend to structure PIPs in a way that they're not successful. Smaller companies are different because they actually some do want people to succeed. But it is emotionally draining for both parties, right? Because you have to keep track of every week. You have to say, you did this, you did this, you did this, and you didn't do this, you didn't do this. And it's extra hard in software development because part of it is creative work. So if you're thinking on a problem for a day and you don't hit your deadlines for that day, the next day you go tell them that, hey, you delayed by a day. We agreed that you're going to get this thing done in a day. It's not like, I'm not saying customer support is easy, but it's not like you handle these many number of calls, you couldn't get it done, and you have a conversation about it. But it's harder for creative roles like product design and engineering for sure.
Yeah, I actually like to also reiterate the fact that you talked about it's a fit problem. It's not a people problem,
I don't
it's a
know.
fit problem. Most of the times, 99% of the times, it's mostly that they just didn't align with this particular role, right?
That's right.
It's a right way of looking at it. And probably it also helps to diffuse that message across. It's saying that, hey, there's nothing personal here. It's more about the fitment. It didn't work out for you here. Maybe you'll be great at someplace else,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
exactly.
think that reassurance is probably like a humane way of treating people with
Yeah,
respect
yeah,
and
yeah.
dignity that you talked
And
about.
also the reality is that, no matter what companies say, companies don't care about people, right? Companies care about outcomes. And I remember this one company that I worked for, I won't name it. I think I took an extra day of vacation or something, and they asked me for that one day's pay back because they accidentally like gave it to me or something. So I mean, and I thought I was like a decent employee there. So, but people care about people, right? So if you show that you care about the success of this person, even after you leave the company, and I know tech is an established industry, but tech is also very small compared to the entire world. So you never know what's going to happen in the future. Like you might leave this company, end up working with that person again, right? Or, they might be your supervisor in the future. Like, you just don't know, right? So I tend to like not burn bridges at all, unless there's like a really, really strong reason to do so.
Tangentially to the conversation we just
Mhm.
had, I'm going to shift gears to moving into hiring.
Sure.
You've been hiring for over 20 years now.
Mhm.
What would absolutely shock the 2005 version of you about how you assess candidates now?
So it's kind of interesting, right? So in the beginning, the competencies were a big deal. Like functional competencies were a big deal for me. Can you code, algorithm, system design? But now the soft skills have become like an even bigger. They have overtaken the functional competencies for me. So for example, the two things that I look for, or actually, let's just like the top one that I look for is, are you self-critical? Can you reflect on your actions and outcomes and automatically figure out whether you could improve? And it's a very hard skill for people to have and develop. So that's number one. A close second is ownership. Would you put your hands up for cleaning up, you know, somebody else's mess, right? And those two skills are so hard to develop. Like like 20 years ago, I wouldn't have even assessed for it because, oh, can you code? Can you get this stuff done? You're like a great engineer. Let's just hire you, right? But now I would take like somebody who's not functionally competent but has those two other skills because I can guarantee you they'll like go much longer way than they'll last you longer than the other sort of rock star engineer.
Right? Uh, in the AI age,
Mhm.
what human skills do you think are going to be more valuable? On the flip side, less valuable as well.
I think like memorizing things are not going to be valuable anymore. Schools have to fundamentally change how they teach concepts to kids, especially if I think back to, I mean, like I guess all of us growing up, you had like memorize a bunch of stuff, like use use rote to like answer questions. I just don't think it's useful anymore. I think the thing that there's this quote that I read in a book called *Sapiens*. Have you heard of *Sapiens*? It's by Yuval
Yes.
Harari. I would say like somewhat like overrated, but it has good concepts in the book. But he says the unique strength of humans is they can dream. no other creature on the planet dreams. So we dream and we manifest those dreams. Like currency is a dreamt up concept. Concept of like money, concept of trade, concept of all these are like, made up stuff like humans made it up. So I think creativity is something we're innately human, at least I like to believe. So maybe in the next 30, 40 years, we'll have the, androids like this is described in Blade Runner, right? They have empathy, they have emotions, they have feelings, maybe. But I think until then, creativity is a uniquely human trait. And I think that's where you should lean in, right? And figure out like how to cultivate that aspect. So anything which is kind of you have to like follow steps, like those things AI will just automate it, right? If you have 10 steps you have to follow, do that 10 steps over and over again, you can just like have somebody else do it. But if it's like a creative problem that you're trying to solve, it's like, and which boil down to people problems, like building relationships and building, earning trust from people, like those all, I don't think those skills will go away. I think they'll be like in more demand because you'll have an AI send a kind of canned email to somebody, they'll upset that customer, and then you'll have to go and respond back and say, okay, calm the customer down, right? I see more of that coming up in the future.
Yeah,
Excellent.
got it. And I actually want to take you back to your Kickstarter job
Sure.
that you're currently at, Mahesh. A very unique one, right? Managing both the product organization and engineering organization. So it's a very interesting market space also, right? You're between creators and backers. And I want to explore this ecosystem a little bit more. How does it differ from a traditional B2B and a B2C model? Like what's differences and what's the similarities or patterns and anti-patterns you see in this company?
Yeah, I think the closest so like kissing cousin is e-commerce, right? So you can it's like look at
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, Alibaba, Walmart, etc. You're exchanging, there are sellers who sell products and then the buyers who buy the products, right? So and there's like parallels between what they do and what crowdfunding does. The big difference in crowdfunding is you're not backing a product, you're backing an idea for a product. A lot of times, I mean, there are like some established companies on the platform too, like who you already know, like the product is real. But the cool ones are the creators who are coming up with original ideas, and the community is backing that idea. It's like, hey, we want to see this come to life, right? Which is different than e-commerce, where it's just a pure exchange of goods. So I look at crowdfunding as you're enabling creativity. You're like allowing creativity to come to life because backers are backing an idea. And fa- humongous brands have come out of just this kernel of an idea. Like Peloton was a Kickstarter campaign. So it was an idea. They built the first bike, raised money for it, and then that became like a big brand. The first Pebble Watch was a Kickstarter campaign. It was just an idea. Here's a smartwatch that can last you like a battery life is like 7 days, and it's not complicated. And people backed it, and now it became a big brand. So that is a big difference between, backers. Yes, backers want their product, but they also want to support your idea. Like that's what so they're looking for ideas that matches with their kind of moral values, etc. And then the other big difference is on like Amazon, Walmart, you don't care who the seller is. As long as you have 5-star reviews, you really don't care. But in Kickstarter, backers care about the creator stories. They're like, well, how did you come about this? And what is your story? Because that is an interesting piece for them, right? So, which is why, you will see, creators forming like huge backing following because they're like, yeah, we really, really love what you stand for. And the last thing is, you know, traditional platforms will never let controversial stuff on their platform. But Kickstarter is not like that, right? So we let quirky, not safe for work stuff too, because that's we so believe that it's a way of expressing creativity, and so be it. As long as it's not illegal, we're like totally
Yeah.
fine with whatever is on the platform, which is also not what other e-commerce platforms will do.
So the shift that I want to take you now is a different direction. Like, how do you balance innovation with trust? That's very foundational to crowdfunding, right? Like, how do you
Yeah,
balance it out?
it's hard. It's a constant struggle. So it's tough because both those things are constant. You have to be constantly innovating. You also have to be constantly investing in trust. So in the end, it comes down to investments, right? Can you make sure like the trust team has enough people? Can you make sure your core team has enough people to do like truly disruptive innovation, so, right? Like will like require sacrifices. Right? So it just means you have to sacrifice current revenue to optimize for future dollars. Right? Sometimes you have to do that, but in the end, it'll come down to your investment thesis. Like, what do you want to invest money in? And it's always going to be a struggle. It's always going to change too. So every quarter you have to change your approach. At least that's what we've been doing.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
We are coming to the tail end of our episode here, and one thing that I'm fascinated by what I saw with you is that you have reinvented yourself multiple times. Looking ahead, what skills are you intentionally developing now?
Um, I think as I get older, the thing that I want to develop is giving back. So through coaching, through mentoring, through helping, and that's also a skill because when somebody asks you, "How do I do this?" It's easy to say, "Yeah, do it like this," right? But that might not work for the other person. So somewhat of a skill that I have to develop because I've been sort of conditioned to make decisions quickly because you're in the seat, so you have to like make decisions quickly. But now, in my coaching sessions, I often kind of let the conversation wander. Let's pull this thread, see where this goes. Let's see if this other person has strong opinions on this. And whenever I position a piece of advice, I position it as my experiences. So you can try it out if you want to. And if you don't try it out, that's fine too, right? But I can sort of share what I have experienced so they can decide on their own. But it is a skill that I am developing for sure.
Last question for the day.
Sure.
If you were to start over in tech today, what would you do differently?
I don't know, probably nothing too different. I think it's I try to like live my life with basically like very little regrets or like zero regrets. So I don't know if I would have made dramatically different choices, early on. So I would say, yeah, probably the same is what I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mahesh. I think we've had a great episode learning about your life experiences, talking about your tech journey, and talking about your big book in particular. And I think there was this powerful segue where we got into like delivering messages, like tough messages to individuals, right? I think I really personally resonated with that segue, and the way you kind of humanized that conversation was amazing to hear. And yeah, thank you so much for spending a lot of your time with us today, and really, really appreciate it. And more power to you, and more power to leaders like you to make this space more human, and also really, really rewarding for the people working under you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.